Hi everyone, welcome to Colour, Module 3 from our Perfect Print Production series. In this module, we look at how to achieve colour accuracy and consistency for your brand in print media. Don't forget that you can pause, go back or even break off and rerun the complete module at any time during this training session. We've all had print projects that haven't quite lived up to our expectations, and particularly with the reproduction of our brand or product colours. Often, when making a direct side-by-side comparison of a current print job with the previous one, we can clearly see there's a variance in the colour. Add to this comparisons between jobs printed on different materials, using different print processes, and from different print suppliers, and as much as we think to ourselves, surely there can only be one Pantone 5415, the fact is that if we don't put in some colour control, these colour variances are just going to keep on coming. Achieving colour accuracy and consistency in print production is a team effort which requires the full cooperation and input of everyone involved in the production workflow: print supplier, designer and client. So how do we achieve colour accuracy? Well, the quick answer is by controlling variables, and in printing, variables are not something that we're short of. As an image passes through the print workflow, each stage and each device can introduce subtle changes in colour, starting with how we capture, view and save the image, all the way through to how the ink is printed on the printing press. And not only do we have practical technical variables like these to contend with, we also have the plain, unwavering facts of colour principles to take into account. And it's with an overview of these that we should really begin. Imagine that this colour sphere, right to the outer perimeter, contains all of the colours that we as human beings can see with our naked eyes. All of the colours in the natural world, from the deepest blues to the most vibrant reds and greens. The range, or the extent of the colours, called the colour gamut, that you can see, is truly incredible. And you know, still today, there isn't one commercial display device that can truly replicate all the visible colours that we can see. So by comparison, let's now go straight to it and focus on the colours within the small blue triangular area in the middle of the sphere. And didn't you just know it? Yep, this is the CMYK colour gamut. So if you're only using the 4 standard process colours of ink, cyan, magenta, yellow and black on the printing press, this relatively small colour gamut is the one you'll be using for your print job. I'm sure you get the point here about how small this colour gamut is compared with that of the natural world. The colours contained within this CMYK gamut, then, are the colours that we saw shown in the printer's process tint chart that we looked at in Module 1. Now, let's compare the size of the Pantone colour gamut. And straight away you can see how much bigger it is than the CMYK gamut. And the difference is clear to see when you compare the range of colours in a Pantone book with the range of colours in a CMYK process tint chart. The Pantone gamut, being a great deal larger, easily contains those bright, vibrant colours that we're so missing from the CMYK colour gamut. From the Pantone gamut, we can achieve those true oranges and the pure reds, the deep blues and the vibrant greens, all and many more of which are really missing from the CMYK colour gamut. But going even larger, if we now compare the RGB colour gamut with the Pantone colour gamut, we can see that even with all the colours in the Pantone range, you still can't completely reproduce all the colours that you can view on your RGB colour monitor. Compared with both CMYK and Pantone, the RGB colour gamut is huge, which creates a problem we all struggle with in print on a daily basis, which is your on-screen RGB image delivers a fabulous, but for most of us, completely unachievable expectation of how your job might appear, which, don't forget, is being printed using the CMYK subtractive colour model on paper. There's no question that achieving colour accuracy and consistency in print production can be challenging, but there are solutions, and those solutions come from controlling the variables. So what are those variables? Let's start with that last point about how we view our artwork and our PDF proofs on screen. Your computer screen creates images using the RGB additive colour model. And we've just seen how big the RGB colour gamut is compared with CMYK. In fact, when you compare how a normal RGB monitor displays CMYK compared with how those colours look when printed, the difference is quite startling. So in order to see colours on screen which are more representative of how your job will look when it's printed in CMYK, your monitor will need to be calibrated. The goal here, obviously, is to calibrate your monitor so that what you see is what you'll get. All monitors display colour differently until they're calibrated or colour managed. And there are principally two reasons why you might need to calibrate a monitor. The first, to maintain the integrity of the device by compensating for changes in how the monitor displays colour over time. And the second, calibrating to simulate and preview the final output by only allowing the monitor to display colours which can actually be achieved on the printing press, and also at the same time taking into account the whiteness and brightness of the material being printed on, which will have a dramatic effect on the colours still further. Another of the great variables which affects our colour accuracy, and this time our consistency, is of course the number of inks we use on the printing press to print the job. Whether or not we're going to stick with just the 4 CMYK colours of process to reproduce the whole job, or if we're going to allow our designer to specify solid colours as well. If you have a colour photographic image anywhere in your job, you will be using the 4 colours of process. That's how the printing process creates the illusion of that image. But when it comes to your logo and other coloured graphical images in your job, bearing in mind the relatively small colour gamut of CMYK, will you really be happy to try and achieve your brand out of only the colours available from CMYK? Are the 4 colours of process even capable of achieving the colour of your brand in the first place? A quick look through the tint chart will certainly tell you, and if your brand colour doesn't seem to be in there, then the answer is no. Looking at it the other way around, if you know the Pantone reference number for your brand, you can simply look it up in the Colour Bridge Pantone book. The Colour Bridge book shows your Pantone colour on the left-hand side, and adjacent to it, the nearest match you can hope to achieve from trying to print the colour only using the CMYK 4 colours of process. Some are incredibly similar and show clearly that you shouldn't have any problem in achieving a good match for your brand colours out of CMYK, meaning that there is no real need to add solid colours, and therefore more cost to your job. However, many other colours, and particularly of course the brighter, often more exciting, more vibrant colours, show that if you really want to stick with only the 4 colours of process on the printing press, you will have to compromise. And we're particularly talking here about colours like the vibrant greens, the true oranges, the pure reds. For these colours, and for many others like them, the only way to ensure colour accuracy is to run them on the printing press as an additional solid ink. An additional tin of ink that is the colour itself, a special colour. A Pantone colour, a spot colour, a 5th colour, call it what you will, it's the only way of achieving any sort of colour accuracy for those brand and product colours which fall outside the capability of CMYK. As well as specifying 1 or more additional solid inks on the printing press to ensure colour accuracy, there are 2 more very good reasons why you might also wish to opt for a special colour, in addition to the standard 4 colour CMYK ink set. Firstly, for fine detail work such as small point-sized coloured text, where a single special ink will give you significantly more colour and image definition than asking up to 4 CMYK ink dots to come together and attempt to create the illusion of both colour and image in a small area. And secondly, for consistency. There's no doubt about it, controlling a single pigment ink in the actual colour you're after throughout a print job is a lot easier than asking 4 dots of CMYK ink to stay exactly in the same size, shape and thickness for the same duration. Even with modern, on-press, closed-loop colour monitoring systems, you still stand more chance of your logo on the first copies being exactly the same colour as your logo on the final copies, and all those in between, when you choose to run a special colour, and this is certainly the case when printing large areas of solid colours. So, the decision of whether or not to run 1 or more special colours in addition to the 4 colour set is a choice made in part about your need for colour accuracy, and in part a commercial decision based on those colour benefits versus, of course, the extra cost. However, matching Pantone colours with CMYK colours is not for the faint-hearted. Pantone themselves say that you will only really match about 60% of solid Pantone colours from CMYK, which leaves a further 40% of brand colours, which perhaps should really be run as a special colour to help achieve colour accuracy. So when we ask our graphic designers to create artwork using only the 4 colours of process, and at the same time give them a Pantone reference for a graphic such as a logo, it's the designer's page layout software that will usually decide on how that Pantone colour is to be achieved from different percentages of cyan, magenta, yellow and black. The graphic designer will input the Pantone reference, and the page makeup software, such as Quark Express or InDesign, will offer a solution for the best and nearest match out of CMYK. And it's worth knowing that often these different applications and the different versions of these applications don't seem to be able to agree with each other. If we input Pantone 5415 into Quark Express, it suggests that a 56% dot size of cyan, an 11% dot size of magenta, no yellow, and a 43% dot size of black will give you the nearest match. However, give InDesign the same question and you'll get a slightly different answer, as you will again if you ask Pantone themselves. The point being, there is no definitive percentage comparison for CMYK to Pantone, as there are simply too many variables, including the substrate to be printed on. Don't forget that neither your Pantone books or your tint charts are printed on your actual material, which can introduce a significant colour variable. To try and achieve more colour accuracy and consistency, one very popular idea which has been adopted by many brands is to, in effect, create your own Pantone book. Generically, these colour references, which form part of a corporate brand guide, are called colour targets and are printed on the actual job material using the actual production process, and often by the actual print suppliers themselves. Part of the real benefit here is that the print buying client has the opportunity to visit the print supplier to press pass and approve these colour targets on press, and so sign off the exact colour reference that the client wants. So now we're defining our brand colours with a colour reference guide that we have proved can be achieved on the printing press. These may still be solid colours or colours made from CMYK, but the point is that they are your colours which you have defined with your print suppliers on your materials and referenced by whatever names and numbers you have chosen to describe them. Colour targets are a great idea and can help you to create your own standard with which you can work with other print suppliers to achieve greater colour accuracy and consistency for your brand. Many print suppliers are happy to work with you to create colour targets which ultimately benefit everyone involved in the production process. Your graphic designer knows what percentages of CMYK to use, the print supplier has a client-approved colour target to match on press, and the client knows exactly what to expect. Now, of course, to give our colour targets as much integrity as possible, ideally they should be printed on the actual substrate that you use most to reflect the whiteness and the brightness of the material, and the smoothness of the surface, which brings us to one of the most significant colour variables in the whole production process: your paper. Let's begin by looking at the surface you're intending to print onto. There are fundamentally 2 categories of paper: coated and uncoated. In close magnification and in its natural unfinished state, paper is like a mountain range of peaks and troughs, creating an uneven lunar-like surface, and certainly not the kind of surface we ideally want to print onto. Your print suppliers want the smoothest surface possible in order that they can control the size, the shape and the thickness of your ink dots to ensure they have maximum opportunity for colour and image control. But initially, at the paper manufacturing company, paper is pretty much, well, just paper until we do something with it to give it the surface quality we need. And one of the most common treatments that any paper will receive is a surface coating. At the manufacturing stage, a coating is applied to the surface of the material, which fills all the troughs, giving us a smoother surface to print on. The paper is now called a coated paper or an art paper. The coating also supports the ink dots on the surface, giving us what printers call more lift, referring to the way that the ink sits on the paper and shines rather than being absorbed into it, giving a duller appearance. Generally, coated papers do deliver a brighter printed image. So, still at the paper manufacturing stage, and after the coating has been applied, to make the surface even smoother and to flatten down all the remaining peaks, many papers now will be polished with huge chromium steel rollers called calendar rollers. This smoothing process is known as calendering, and the extent to which the surface of the coated paper is smoothed gives us the range of coated papers we can choose from. So when you choose between a silk, a velvet, a matte or a gloss, what you're really choosing is the smoothness of the surface, and the smoother your paper gets, the more it reflects the light and the shinier it becomes. This type of paper would therefore be described as a smooth coated gloss paper, and a coated paper which has not been polished or calendared to quite the same extent is described as a matte coated, which we commonly know as silks and velvets. The other category, of course, is uncoated paper. This time, although the paper has often received what is known as a size to seal the surface, it lacks the smooth character of a coated material. And because the surface is not highly polished like the coated papers, as it hits the surface, the light is diffused, making the paper appear matte. This, however, is a real benefit for brochures and magazines with lots of text, because there's no doubt about it, uncoated papers are much easier to read than glossy papers, as you're not constantly having to tip the paper into an angle which doesn't glare and reflect the light back at you. So, is there a colour difference between printing on coated and uncoated paper? You bet there is. In fact, so much so that even Pantone produced two different sets of books, one showing you all the colours on coated paper and the other on uncoated paper. And there is quite a difference, so you need to be very sure about which book you're looking at in respect of which type of material you'll be printing on. Pantone colour references do help, in that the C in Pantone 5415C is for coated, and the U in Pantone 5415U is for uncoated. Tint charts are also commonly shown on both coated and uncoated papers. A good example of where you would really notice this colour difference would be in a job such as a direct mail pack, where you might have several different elements printed on several different stocks. For example, an uncoated paper for the outer envelope, a highly polished gloss art coated paper for the sales brochure, and perhaps a silk for the personalised letter and application form. It's when you compare your printed logo across all of these different materials that you really start to notice the difference. Often, therefore, a brand will have one Pantone reference for reproducing their logo on coated paper, and then a different Pantone reference when printing on uncoated paper to achieve consistency. Again, however, let's not forget that although we might specify colours quite correctly from either coated or uncoated references, the paper these colour books and charts are printed on is not the actual same material which your job will be printed on. It's likely, therefore, that your paper will differ in colour to these guides by its whiteness and its brightness. We often refer to paper as being white, but when you put a few different white papers together, you can see that some could indeed be correctly described as white, or even brilliant white, whereas others are actually quite yellow or cream by comparison. Add to this the issue of coated versus uncoated, and we can clearly see why paper is one of the biggest variables in the fight to control our brand and our product colours in print. And it's because most printing ink is translucent that the colour of your paper becomes an issue. Optically, the ink absorbs the colour characteristic of the paper, all of which again makes the case for printing brand colour targets on the actual stock you will be printing on, adjusting your colours on press until you get exactly what you want, and then recording the percentages and values of ink that have created it for future reference. Obviously, it's not just about printing on paper, and every kind of substrate comes with its own colour matching challenges. However, printing on PVCs, polypropylenes and foils is made easier by the fact that we often print a white primer down first on which to print our images. This white primer therefore provides a predictable surface colour for whiteness and brightness and gives us a standard on which to colour match. And just when you thought that was it for the variables that are constantly challenging us in the quest for colour accuracy, there is one more. And it's the one which invariably you have least control over: light. The appearance of all colours are affected greatly by the surrounding or ambient lighting conditions. So much so that a print job can appear completely correct in one lighting environment and completely wrong in another. And because ordinary daylight is far from being a standard, print suppliers have strict lighting standards in which to work. So, by far the best way to ensure consistency and colour accuracy when viewing and assessing both printed proofs and the final printed job is for everyone involved in the production process to work within these same standardised lighting conditions. To achieve this, print suppliers, graphic designers, and those clients who are serious about achieving colour accuracy all use a range of viewing booths delivering industry standard lighting in temperatures measured in degrees of Kelvin, the industry standard unit of lighting measurement. These light boxes allow you to accurately assess colour proofs and print work in the same conditions and test the appearance of your Pantone colours in various different lights. Increasingly, and for reasons derived from many behavioural studies, today many different commercial environments have many different ambient lighting standards. And if you find that your brand colours are not representing correctly in the lighting environment that they need to, your printers can adjust the colour they print on the press so that the colour will default correctly to your specified lighting environment, so you get exactly what you need. And getting exactly what you need is what good colour management is all about. Ensuring that both the quality and the colour accuracy of your print job do match your brand standards and live up to your expectations. So, as a final and absolute safety net, passing or approving your work on press has always been a great idea. To visit your print supplier on the day and time your job is scheduled to run on the press, and to ensure that you get exactly what you want, is arguably one of the best investments of your time at this stage of the process. Obviously, personally approving your job on the press is not always practical for reasons of schedule and geography, and you certainly wouldn't need to do it for every job, or for reprints of regular work. But for those new jobs and those more significant and critical publications, there are some great benefits. During a press pass, many print suppliers will encourage you to stand next to the press with the printer and take an active role in suggesting colour corrections while the press is running. You might be comparing the printing job against a proof which you signed off previously, a colour target which you and your printer have agreed upon, or even a sample of the actual product which, after all, is ultimately what you're trying to represent. That might be swatches of fabric, a pair of shoes, a piece of furniture, anything that you choose to colour match. Next, and when the colour balance is exactly how you wish it to be, your printer will ask you to sign off one of the sheets from the press called a running sheet. This signed pass sheet will now serve as the reference point for all those yet to be printed, and of course for any future reprints of the same job. At the same time, the colour setup and running status of your job will be recorded to allow inline densitometers and spectrophotometers to help maintain consistency by scanning the colour bar on the printed sheet and measure data for further colour management. This measured colour data can then be used to allow completely automated closed-loop control of the printing press and ink settings. And it's technology like this that's giving us ever more consistent and colour-accurate print work, as well as faster mate-readies, the initial setup of the printing press, which ultimately gives us faster production and lower print costs. So, not only does passing on press have the potential to get you exactly what you want for your job, but it's also a great opportunity to spend some more time with your print suppliers, to further build your relationship, and also build on your print knowledge of what can, and sometimes what can't be achieved on the press. And it's probably worth pointing out here that colour correction on press really should be fine-tuning only. Assuming that you are happy enough to sign off your original proof and commit the job to the press in the first place, at this stage we should only really be talking about making small corrections to your overall colour. Unfortunately, on many presses, it's simply not possible to make isolated colour corrections without affecting the colour balance of other images above and below the one which you're trying to correct. If not managed correctly, this can now quickly lead to the need for a compromise, which can, in turn, test a relationship between client and supplier. We look more closely at this and other issues of printing and imposition in both the proofing and printing modules, also from this series. So colour accuracy and consistency in print doesn't occur naturally, and we all have to work pretty hard to achieve it. When you look at all the variables from the issues of colour gamut, on-screen colour representation, software interpretation, substrate differences and lighting, to name but a few, it would be true to say that achieving colour accuracy in print can be a very frustrating journey indeed. But working as a team with your graphic designers and your print suppliers to minimise and control these variables while setting standards for the future, you should always be able to ensure the success of your brand and product colours in print media. If you have any questions about any of the subjects covered in this module, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you for choosing us today, and good luck with all your print productions. You've been watching a John Boardman Performance Learning module. See you again very soon.